Okay, hi. So here we are again. Today I really wanted to come on to talk about the question that I'm sure is on so many different people's minds when it comes to my work, which is what is NaKeD GuRu? Okay, so in a nutshell, if you haven't already noticed, you are NaKeD GuRu. Now, like I said, I started developing this program many years ago, and we kind of came up with the name NaKeD GuRu because what I found as a result of really coming into my own radiant nature was the byproduct of that was there was just this innate innocent expression that felt it was pouring forth through me to be like a child again and just to enjoy being free in nature. Okay. Now, in some ways, the projection that have received over the past decade for doing this work is very much, oh, she thinks she's a guru. And actually, more than that, it has to do with sex. It has to do with, people's sort of very unevolved projections in sex. Sex is a huge part of the teaching of freedom that I am particularly pertaining to. You could almost say that my work is very much based on Tantra. Though, to be fair, I haven't ever really read that many tantric writings because they're so complicated. They're very much often written, hundreds of years ago, and sometimes they're translations of Indian or Tibetan texts, and they're quite complicated, and I'm not sure that people necessarily entirely even understand the true essence of Tantra in and of itself. And particularly since the emergence of the 60s and 70s and the free love movement, and certainly the spiritual guru, if you like, who came along during that time, Osho, okay? And his work was very much based on Tantra. And he actually has a book, or there is a book that is transcribed from Osho's speakings on a very ancient tantric text, which has 112 meditations that are relevant to living a tantra lifestyle. And of those 112 meditations, only 6 are actually based on sex. The essence of Tantra in and of itself is that it recognizes that the body is the vehicle for your spiritual awakening. And sex is actually an aspect of that, but it isn't the be all and end all, okay? It is actually possible to be living a life without the pleasure of touch and sex and still be a tantrika. And that's because it's all about fully dropping into the body and feeling how you're carrying stress, tension, baggage, and the release of that is your spiritual discipline. And that really is the essence of awakening medicine. The byproduct of being a NaKeD GuRu, which is being open, honest, wild, and free is to become like a child again and fully just in your radiant nature. So the essence of awakening medicine, as I said, well, there are many, okay, but one of the truest essences of awakening medicine is recognizing that you are everything and everything is you, okay, and that you are merely having a relationship with yourself with every single interaction that you have. And I've actually come to recognize that will be a direct reflection and even down to the percentage of how much of yourself is still carrying those reactive patterns and those reactive or quite often violent communication aspects still within us, if they are, even if we're just observing it through somebody else's behavior, even if it's just on the street. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit clearer. If you are living with someone who you're just at that place in your relationship where you're just at each other's throats, a lot of the time, continuously, day in, day out, okay, you could say that person is reflecting, up to even 100% of yourself. And those aspects are you. If, however, your greatest trigger isn't the partner that you live with or your children, but your parents, for instance, not living next door, but they're, slightly removed, and those negative interactions are only happening once a week or once a month, you could then say that percentage of you that still needs to heal that aspect is something more like 50% or 40, 30, 25% of you, okay? If it's just an interaction that you're having in the street with a neighbor, could even be on Facebook, that kind of thing, as long as it's not every interaction and every day that you're on Facebook and it's just happening, once or twice around a strong astrological transit, a full moon or new moon in Scorpio, for instance, then you can expect to sort of see that as still about, kind of 10% of yourself, that kind of thing. And then, if the only time you're around aggressive energies is when you observe somebody else having a fight on the street, then you're looking at, okay, you're really starting to ascend through these aspects that keep us tightly restricted in what I coined earlier as karmic bondage, okay? So the awakening process is all about coming to really recognizing yourself in the other. And we've done a little bit of shadow work in a nutshell. The awakening medicine program is breaking down the shadow work aspect, okay? And rather than it being in a nutshell, it's breaking it down in a very concise way. So one of the things that we do when we're working with our shadow is we want to really look at what is it that I'm feeling. However, sometimes it can be really, really difficult to see our own behaviors. What I've come to realize is that actually, in order to be really a great therapist and a natural healer, the only thing that you really, really need is to see yourself fully and in your totality, okay? The problem is we are the most difficult part to see. Really, it's very difficult for us to fully see our own behaviors. Somebody else will be able to see it and they'll be able to tell you exactly what your issue is, okay? And very often it's a projection anyway, particularly if it's coming from a place of the trigger. So one way that we can begin to really get clear on what it is that we need to release in order to move forward with grace and ease is by going into that process, looking at the other person's behavior. Quite often, one of the first things that people say to me when they come for, in particular, kinesiology is, I have a problem with X. It could be a partner, could be a parent, could be a child, could be a boss, could be a friend, a sibling, anyone. And the first thing that I always say to those people is, we can't really do anything to change that person's behavior because they aren't here, okay? And until they decide to be here, there's nothing we can do to change them. But what we can do is change ourselves so that their behavior doesn't trigger us, doesn't touch us in any way, shape, or form. In fact, if anything, the essence of awakening medicine is to get ourselves into such an ascended, elevated state of Christ consciousness that if we find ourselves around triggered energies, we have the total awareness in that moment that instead of going into our trigger, we've healed our reactivity, and so our response is to sit back, drop down, hold the space, and allow the person to purge without judgment, without even any emotional trigger or response at all, okay? But like I said, that doesn't come overnight, and it takes a great deal of self-control and self-discipline. And that has everything to do with the food and the substances that you put into your body that are creating heat and inflammation, and therefore reactive, in particular, mind and emotion, as well as our physical, habitual body postures and, in particular, shock and trauma that we may have taken on from a very early age, also held in the body, and will also be triggered in a state of reactivity as a result of somebody else's energy that we feel threatened by, okay, on some level, whether that's jealousy, anger, sadness, frustration, and all the rest of it. So just to round it up, the essence of becoming a NaKeD guru is about recognizing yourself in your totality, realizing that there really is no one else. And everything that you see is your perception of reality and your projection if you are triggered. The only way that we're able to see someone else in their totality is when we're coming from a place of discernment and observation, and from a very grounded, very centered, very calm, relaxed, and understanding place with pure compassion. And that, in a nutshell, is the essence of awakening medicine and what it means to be your own NaKeD guru. Ho, yo.